I always knew I wasn't their favorite, but I never expected my own parents to betray me like that. My name is Natalia, and for most of my life, I'd been the shadow in my sister Camille's spotlight. Camille, the golden child, the one with the dimples, the dance trophies, and the disastrous love life that everyone seemed to romanticize instead of criticize. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I was the quiet one, the responsible one. I kept my head down, worked 2 jobs through college, and inherited Grandpa Louie's tiny downtown bookstore when he passed away. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. What most people didn't know, though, was that Grandpa Louie left more than a bookstore behind. Hidden in a safe under the floorboards, wrapped in an old war medal box, was a document, an updated will, one that named me as the sole beneficiary of his savings, an inheritance totaling nearly $280,000. He said it was because I was the only one who stayed by his side when he got sick, the only one who didn't treat him like a burden. I didn't tell anyone. I quietly honored his wishes and kept the money untouched in a separate account, as a backup for emergencies. My parents assumed the bookstore was all he left, and never asked more. Or so I thought. Camille had already been divorced once by 30, and her second wedding to some startup crypto guy named Jeremy was being fast-tracked into a high society spectacle. My parents went into full fantasy mode, tux fittings, chandeliers, custom ice sculptures, and a lavender and gold dress code that felt more royal coronation than wedding. But when I asked how they could afford it, my mother just waved me off and said, "Some daughters bring honor, Natalia. Others just bring questions." That should have been my first clue. A week later, I got a letter from the bank. Not a regular statement, but a withdrawal notice, a massive one. My account had been drained. The emergency fund, Grandpa's money, gone. I drove straight to the bank in a fog of disbelief, heart pounding, hands shaking. "It was authorized," the banker said. "Your father came in with the documentation in the power of attorney form." "But I never gave anyone that authority," I whispered, voice trembling. The woman leaned in quietly. "I think you need to get a lawyer." When I confronted my parents, my mother didn't flinch. My father didn't even look me in the eye. "You don't need that money," she said coolly. "Camille deserves a fresh start. She's getting married again, and this time it's to someone who matters." I was stunned. "You stole my inheritance. You took what Grandpa left for me and gave it to her?" "It's all family money anyway," she said, sipping tea as if we were discussing weather. "Camille is building a future. You're just selling old books." Something broke inside me that day. They didn't even ask. They decided that my life, my future, my quiet, hard-earned stability meant nothing compared to Camille's Instagram-worthy fairy tale. I left their house shaking, not with grief, but with something colder, something sharper. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just walked out, and I began to plan. I didn't cry. Not that night, not the next day, not even when I walked past the empty bookstore window with the "For Lease" sign hanging like a taunt. Because I knew one thing, Camille's fairy tale would eventually fall apart. And when it did, I would make sure I was already standing, tall and untouchable, while theirs crumbled around them. For the first few weeks, I disappeared. I sold what little I had left, packed a bag, and moved to a tiny apartment above a bakery 2 towns over. I cut contact with everyone except one person, Eleanor. Eleanor was Grandpa Louie's old friend, a retired attorney who had helped him draft that hidden will. When I showed her the forged power of attorney form my father used to steal the money, she tightened her lips and whispered, "They committed fraud, Natalia, and we can prove it." But I didn't want to go to court, not yet. No headlines, no public battle. That wasn't my style. I wanted something cleaner, quieter, more lasting. So instead, I got to work. I enrolled in an online business mentorship program. With Eleanor's help, I quietly built a new company, a boutique publishing agency designed to help first-time authors get their books to market. I called it Louie Press. No one knew I was behind it, not even Camille. And while she flaunted engagement photos by the beach, I was holding virtual meetings with international clients and buying digital ad space under anonymous LLCs. In 6 months, I had 5 signed authors, 2 agents working under me, and a steady stream of income. Quiet success, the kind no one claps for until it's too late. Meanwhile, Camille's wedding circus reached fever pitch. There were magazine spreads, influencer deals, and branded hashtags. My parents gushed like teenagers every time she posted a new wedding update. When I didn't RSVP, my mother sent me a single message. If you can't support your sister, don't bother showing up. So I didn't. Not to the bridal shower, not to the rehearsal dinner, not even to the wedding. But I did send a gift. 1 week after the vows were exchanged under a flower arch that cost more than my entire college education, Camille received a letter from a lawyer, delivered by hand, while she was having brunch with her new in-laws. It stated in precise legal language that her wedding had been financed with stolen assets, that she and our parents were under quiet investigation, and that the original will had been verified by 2 witnesses: the bank account, the bookstore profits, the forged signature. They were all traceable. Camille called me screaming, "Are you trying to ruin my marriage?" "No," I said calmly, "I'm just correcting the record." But I wasn't done. Through a mutual connection, I'd learned that Camille's new husband, Jeremy, had a long trail of lawsuits behind him. He'd just been good at burying them. With a little research, I uncovered that he had never legally finalized his divorce from his first wife. That made Camille's new marriage invalid and illegal. I never shared that with Camille. I shared it with her divorce lawyer, a woman I had personally hired 6 months prior, because I knew. I knew Jeremy would cheat. He already was. I had the photos, the dates, the receipts. And when Camille finally caught him in the act, months later, shattered and desperate, she ran to the same woman I had paid in advance. Yes, I covered her retainer. I didn't do it out of kindness. I did it because I wanted her to know who really saved her, not Mom, not Dad. Me. My parents found out last, when the bank froze their accounts, when their home, the one they used as collateral for Camille's wedding loan, was taken by the court, when Eleanor filed the civil suit for inheritance theft in my name. I didn't show up to court. I didn't need to. The facts spoke louder than I ever could. Instead, I sat in the back of my tiny office with a cup of tea and a framed photo of Grandpa Louie on the wall. I whispered, "I did it, Grandpa. I did it without shouting." And just like that, I smiled, not out of vengeance, but out of peace. Because the best revenge is the one that doesn't look like revenge at all. I thought revenge would feel louder, but in the end, it wasn't the courtroom silence or the look on Camille's face when the truth finally sank in that gave me satisfaction. It was the letter. A simple letter, written in my own handwriting, signed with love and power. Months had passed since the lawsuit. My parents' assets were frozen. Camille had filed for annulment after discovering not only Jeremy's infidelity, but that the man had used her credit to buy a luxury car for another woman. It wasn't public knowledge, but I made sure her social media brand deals quietly fell through, one by one, with anonymous tips and untraceable screenshots. I didn't want Camille destroyed. I just wanted her to know how it felt to be betrayed by the ones who swore they loved you most. She moved back into our childhood home, now half empty and echoing. My mother called once, voice trembling. "You've made your point, Natalia. You've punished us enough. Can we talk?" I paused for a long moment. "Number. You made your choice when you called me a burden while spending my inheritance on imported napkins." And then I hung up. But the final twist wasn't anger. It was the gala. Louis Press had been quietly gaining recognition in the publishing world, and that spring I was invited to speak at a Women in Business Awards event as an anonymous angel investor. I almost declined, until I saw the venue. It was the ballroom where Camille had her first wedding, the one paid for with my name erased from Grandpa Louie's legacy. So I said yes. I arrived in a tailored black jumpsuit, hair pinned up, heels clicking across the marble floor. No family, no entourage, just confidence that came from earning my place. When they called my name, my full name, on stage, the audience clapped. I took the mic with a smile and said, "There was a time I thought being silent meant being weak, that standing still meant I'd been defeated. But I learned something. Silence can be strength, patience can be strategy, and sometimes when everyone counts you out, it's the perfect time to begin your story." Afterward, as guests mingled, a woman tapped my shoulder. "Excuse me, are you Natalia Calloway, the woman who saved that indie bookshop chain and turned it into a publishing house?" I smiled. "Yes, that's me." She was a scout from a production studio, and within months, Louis Press had not only signed a book-to-film deal, but I was made executive producer. That was the twist no one saw coming. I turned the Betrayal into an empire. But I still had one last thing to do. I returned to the family house once, just once. I didn't knock. I stood on the sidewalk in front, watching Camille pull weeds from the dying garden. Her face was thinner, tired, but I saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Humility. She noticed me, stood up slowly. "Why are you here?" I held up an envelope. "This is yours." Inside was a legal document, half the remaining value of what our grandfather had left us. The court had granted me full control, but I gave her back what she never earned, not to make peace, but to show her what integrity looked like. "I'm not my parents," I said simply, "and I never wanted you to be me. But I do hope you remember who helped you stand again." She didn't say thank you, not then. But a week later, a package arrived at Louis Press. Inside was a signed copy of her debut novel, something she must have written in the fallout. The dedication read, "To the sister I never truly saw until she showed me who she really was." That was the real win. Not money, not power, not even revenge. It was becoming someone they could never erase again. When I arrived at my own book premiere months later, in a sleek white limo, cameras flashing and journalists calling my name, I stepped out not as the family shame, but as Natalia Calloway, founder, survivor, and storyteller. And for the first time, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see what they called me. I saw who I had become. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.